At my brother's promotion party, he raised his glass and turned my humiliation into a toast. My name is Haley Nolan. I am 28 years old, and the laughter hit me first. Loud, polished, merciless laughter rolled across the ballroom and bounced off the glass walls, mixing with the clink of champagne flutes. That was the moment my life finally stopped pretending it was only cracked. That was the moment everything broke open. My brother Daniel stood in the center of the room with his champagne held high. The lights caught his expensive watch. They always caught him. Daniel had spent his whole life standing under lights shining so brightly that my parents never seemed to notice the shadow I lived in. He smiled that perfect white-tooth smile of his, the one that made investors trust him, executives believe him, and my parents forget I had ever existed. "Let's toast," he said. The crowd quieted instantly, because Daniel was the kind of man people listened to before he even said anything. Every face turned toward him with admiration. "To family," he said, and the moment those words left his mouth, I felt a cold knot tighten inside my stomach. Then his eyes moved through the room until they found me. "And to my sister Haley, who got fired again." For one single second, the room held its breath. Then Daniel delivered the punchline. "Maybe she should stick to stripping." The ballroom exploded. It was not just laughter. It was release. It was the sound of rich, successful people enjoying permission to laugh at the designated failure. Men in expensive suits chuckled and slapped Daniel on the back. Women in silk dresses hid their smirks behind champagne glasses. Glasses clinked. Phones came up. My failure had become entertainment, and my brother was the host. I looked at my father first. He was laughing. Not politely, not nervously, not because he had been caught off guard. He was really laughing. It was deep and smug. The same laugh I remembered from childhood when I fell off my bike and split my chin open. The same laugh I heard when I told him I wanted to become a coder instead of a sales associate. It was the laugh that said he had been right about me all along. I did not move. I did not blink. I did not cry. I was finished crying. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. While they laughed, while they pointed, while they drank to my failure, I counted the seconds. My eyes stayed on the tall oak doors at the entrance of the ballroom. 3, 2, 1. Those doors would open soon. I knew they would because I was the one who had sent the invitation. And when they opened, Daniel's perfect shining empire of lies would come down in front of everyone. Growing up, there were 2 children in the Nolan house. There was Daniel, and then there was me. Daniel was the golden boy. He was my father's pride and my mother's echo. He was the family's walking success story. He got the best grades, the first car, the college scholarship, and the center spot in every family photo. He was the son my father bragged about at barbecues. My son the genius, my son the leader, my son with a future. And me, I was the experiment that did not work. I was the ghost at the dinner table. Too quiet, too sensitive, too much. I was the girl who liked math instead of parties. The girl who locked herself in a room taking apart old computers, while Daniel stayed outside winning trophies, smiles and approval. Every holiday followed the same script. Daniel would get something for his future, a new laptop, a new phone, a new jacket for interviews. I would get a gift card to a clothing store with a note from my mother telling me I might try to look nicer. Every dinner was a performance, and Daniel always had the lead role. He talked about debate team internships, professors who loved him, and bosses who saw his potential. My father listened with bright eyes. Then, eventually, he would turn toward me without really looking at me and ask, "And you, Haley? Still playing with those toys?" I would say, "I'm learning to code, Dad." He would nod in that dismissive way and turn right back to Daniel. So about that internship. That was how I learned to shrink. I learned to make myself small enough not to disturb the shine around Daniel. I learned to apologize for taking up space. He shined, and I apologized. That was the rule. When I landed a job at Hayward Technologies, I was honestly shocked. It was not a fake job, not a pity role, not some temporary position my parents could dismiss as another phase. It was a real job, a good job, a junior developer position at one of the biggest tech firms in the country. For the first time in my life, I let myself think, maybe this was it. Maybe now they would finally see me. I told them at Sunday dinner. My father raised one eyebrow. Hayward? That's a serious place, Haley. Are you sure you're ready for that? I tried to keep my voice steady. I am, Dad. It's a junior developer role. Daniel already worked at Hayward in the marketing department, and he gave me that fake Big Brother smile, all teeth and no warmth. That's great, Hale, he said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. His hand was warm, but his eyes were ice. You'll do great. Just try not to get emotional this time. I looked at him. Emotional? He leaned back as if he were doing me a favor. You know how you get. You're very passionate. In a corporate environment, some people call that instability. You just have to be careful. My mother nodded immediately. He's right, dear. Listen to your brother. He knows how these things work. So I listened. I nodded. I went to work. For 2 years, I worked harder than anyone around me. I came in early. I stayed late. I solved problems other people gave up on. I kept my head down. I did not argue. I did not get emotional. I coded. I built. I proved myself silently, line by line, because I still believed proof mattered. 2 years later, I was escorted out of Hayward Technologies by security with a cardboard box in my arms. My keycard had been deactivated. My email was locked. I sat in the lobby beneath the giant silver H logo, staring at the box in my lap, unable to breathe. The HR woman had been cold and clinical. We're terminating your employment, Haley. It's for workplace instability. Instability? That word hit me harder than the firing itself. What did I do? I asked. My voice shook, and I hated myself for it. We can't discuss the specifics, she said, but we've received reports. You're seen as unreliable and volatile. I looked down at the box. It held a coffee mug, a notebook, and a small wilted succulent. 2 years of my life had fit inside a box small enough for me to carry out alone. I went home and did not tell my parents. I could not. For a week, I sat in my small apartment staring at the wall. Then an email arrived. It was from a junior admin at Hayward named Sarah someone I had helped a few times when her computer crashed. The subject line said, "I'm so sorry." The message was short, but it split my life in two. She told me she should not have been saying anything, but she had been the one who filed the reports. Daniel had sent them to HR. He had forwarded emails from me, but he had changed what I wrote. He had told them I was having episodes. He had told them I was unstable. She was sorry. He wanted my project, the one I had always been working on. He told his boss it was his, my project, my algorithm. The thing that made Daniel's career was the thing that got me fired. The thing that almost destroyed my life had come from my own hands. I was not a marketing assistant. I was not an intern. I was not the emotional little sister everyone had decided I was. I was a developer, and I was a good one. The project Daniel stole was not just some file. It was mine. I had built it from nothing. I called it Project Halo. I built it in quiet corners of the office during lunch breaks. I built it at 3 in the morning in my apartment, staring at code until my eyes burned. It was a data AI algorithm. Most corporate AI systems were clunky. They analyzed old data and told people what had already happened. Mine was different. Mine could predict. It could analyze market trends, internal emails, and financial reports to identify corporate risk before it became visible. It could see a bad quarter coming. It could detect a product failure before launch. It was fast, smart, and elegant. It was my entire mind translated into lines of code. Deep inside the core of the algorithm, in a non-executing comment line where no one would ever think to look, I had signed my name. 3 letters. H-J-N. Haley Jane Nolan. It was tiny, hidden, and completely unnecessary, but it was mine. A secret little piece of pride. I was 2 days away from showing Project Halo to my boss when Daniel started paying attention. About a month before I was fired, he cornered me near the coffee machine and said, "I hear you're working on something interesting, Haley." I looked down and told him it was just a side project. He smiled. "You should be careful with side projects. They can distract you from your real job." He worked in marketing. He should not have known anything about what I was building. He must have been watching me, watching my network activity, watching for something he could take. 1 month later, I was fired. 6 months after that, Hayward Technologies announced a massive breakthrough. I was sitting on my sofa trying to figure out how I was going to pay rent when I saw his face on a tech news site. Daniel was smiling beside the CEO. The headline called him the man behind a breakthrough AI that had saved Hayward Technologies. The article said his system was a revolutionary data AI that could predict corporate risk and had already saved the company millions. Then I read Daniel's quote. "We call it the Guardian system." My hands started shaking. I did not call him. I did not scream. I did not throw my phone. My heart did not break because that had already happened too many times. This was different. My heart calcified. It hardened into something cold, patient, and precise. I knew Daniel was sloppy. Arrogant people usually are. He was a salesman, not a builder. He did not understand code well enough to clean it properly. He would have copied my work, pasted it, renamed it, and pretended it was his. He would have left my initials buried in the core. I opened my laptop and messaged one friend I still had inside the company, a coder named Mike, who worked on the security team. My message was simple. I told him I had a strange request and asked whether he could get into the source code for the new Guardian system and run a search. He replied a minute later asking what he should search for. I typed 3 letters, HJN. Then I waited. 5 minutes passed and my blood felt like ice water. Finally, a new message popped up. Mike told me the initials were there, buried in the core file. Then he asked what was going on. I closed the laptop. I stood up, walked into my kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly. Daniel had not just gotten me fired. He had not just stolen my career. He had stolen my work and my name. He thought I was a ghost. He thought I was unstable. He thought I would break, cry, disappear, and stay quiet forever. He was wrong. I went back to my laptop. I deleted the chat with Mike and started planning. I needed money. I needed access. But I was Haley Nolan, the unstable developer. No tech firm wanted to hire someone with that label attached to her name. My name had become poison. So I disappeared. I stopped applying as Haley Nolan and became H. Nolan 88, a freelance cybersecurity contractor on an anonymous gig site. I took the jobs no one else wanted. I cleaned viruses out of servers for small businesses. I ran cheat penetration tests for desperate startups. I repaired broken systems for people who did not care who I was, as long as I could fix what they had broken. It was hard, lonely, and exhausting. My apartment became almost empty. A mattress on the floor, a folding table, and my computer. Every dollar went toward rent and better equipment. Every night after the freelance work was done, I worked on my real job. I started with what I knew. Daniel was arrogant, and arrogant people are lazy about security. I knew his dog's name. I knew his high school mascot. I knew the secret birthday he lied about to seem younger. It took me 3 hours to get into his personal email. It should have been harder. It was pathetic. From his email, I got into his cloud storage. And there it was. The whole plan. The evidence folder he had built against me. The fake emails. The drafts. The logs showing him accessing my workstation after hours using a stolen admin password. He had copied my entire Project Halo folder. He had not even bothered to delete the original. He had just taken it. I saved everything. I made copies. I backed them up to 3 different encrypted drives and hid one of them in a storage unit across town. That evidence alone would have been enough to get him fired, but I was not finished. I kept digging. I used his personal email to reset his work account password. Then I was inside Hayward Technologies again. This time, I was a ghost in their system by choice. I watched him. Every login he made, every document he filed, every email he sent. I tracked all of it. Daniel thought he had deleted the trail, but I built the map that led straight back to him. I watched him use Project Halo, my Project Halo, to run analyses for his division. But he was not only giving reports to his bosses. I saw encrypted messages. I saw access logs from strange IP addresses. He was leaking data. He was using my algorithm to discover which of Hayward's competitors were at risk, which stocks were about to fall and which ones were about to rise. Then he was selling that information. Insider trading. My heart did not pound when I understood it. It simply ticked like a clock. I followed the data. I found bank transactions. I found shell accounts in the Cayman Islands. I found money moving quietly and quickly. Daniel was not just a thief. He was a high-level criminal. He had not only climbed the ladder, he had used my work to build his own ladder, and he was burning the company down while standing on top of it. He was not just my brother anymore. He was a stranger. I saved the emails, the access logs, the bank transfers, and the encrypted chats with investors. I organized everything into one clean, undeniable file. I told myself over and over that it was not revenge. Revenge was emotional. Revenge was messy. This was correction. This was balance. This was evidence. I had the file. I had the truth. All I needed was the right moment. 2 weeks later, I saw the press release. Hayward Technologies was promoting Daniel Nolan to executive vice president. They were throwing him a huge public party at a place called the Glass Room. I smiled when I read it because it was perfect. I sent one anonymous email to Robert Henderson, the CEO of Hayward Technologies, from a secure temporary address. The subject line was simple: your company. In the message, I told him that everything he believed about Daniel Nolan was a lie, and everything he had been told about Haley Nolan was a lie. If he wanted to save his company, he needed to be at the Glass Room the next night at 9 o'clock. An associate would meet him at the door. I attached one file, just one, a single bank transfer from a known shell corporation to Daniel Nolan, dated the day after Daniel's last big win for the company. Then I hit send. After that, I went to my closet and pulled out the one good dress I owned, a simple black dress. I was going to a party. The Glass Room was exactly what it sounded like. It was on the 50th floor with walls made of windows and a city spread below like a carpet of diamonds. The floors were black marble. Mirrors covered the ceiling. The entire room had been built to reflect champagne, silk, money, and ego. Everyone was beautiful. Everyone was rich. Everyone was laughing that loud, polished laugh I had heard all my life from people who believed they were above consequence. Daniel stood in the center of it all, glowing beneath the lights. My father was at his side with a drink in his hand, and pride shining so brightly across his face that it was almost painful to look at. My mother stood nearby, touching Daniel's arm, laughing at something he said. They looked perfect. A perfect family. I was not invited. I walked straight past the check-in desk. A woman with a clipboard and headset stepped in front of me and told me it was a private event. I said calmly, "I'm Haley Nolan. Daniel is expecting me." She checked the list and told me I was not on it. I did not argue. I just looked at her and waited. She got flustered and said she needed a moment. I did not give her one. I walked right past her. When I entered the ballroom, the music seemed to dim. Maybe it really did. Or maybe silence simply spread faster than sound. Whispers died. Heads turned. Haley Nolan, the failure, the unstable one, the ghost, had returned. The silence grew so loud I could hear ice shifting in someone's glass. I saw my father's face first. His smile vanished and was replaced by hot anger and humiliation. My mother looked frightened. I walked through the crowd, and people moved away from me as if failure might be contagious. I went straight to Daniel. His smile tightened. It did not reach his eyes. "Didn't expect you to show up, sis," he said, quietly, coldly. I told him I liked surprises. I even smiled a little. It was a faint smile, and I am sure it looked broken. Good. Let him think I was broken. "You really shouldn't be here, Haley," he hissed. "You're embarrassing Dad." I looked over his shoulder at the digital clock above the bar. It was almost 9. I looked back at Daniel and whispered, "You look nervous, Danny." His face sharpened. "Get out." I kept my voice quiet. "No, I don't think I will." Then the clock struck 9. Perfect timing. Daniel must have seen something change in my face. He must have realized I was not scared. I was not broken. I was waiting. That made him angry, because Daniel needed me to be the failure. His success was built on my failure. It was the foundation beneath his whole life. So he grabbed a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter and stepped onto the small temporary stage. The music faded. A spotlight found him. He boomed out, "Friends, family," colleagues, with a voice full of false confidence. He was playing his role. He looked right at our father. "Dad, we did it." My father raised his glass eyes, wet with pride. "You did it, son." Daniel soaked it in. The applause, the smiles, the worship. He was the king of the room. He said it had been a long road filled with hard work and late nights, but Hayward was stronger than ever, and he was honored to lead the new data systems division. More applause followed. I did not clap. I only watched. My silence was a black hole in the center of that bright, noisy room, and Daniel felt it. He looked at me again, and his smile became a weapon. "Of course," he said, lowering his voice just enough to draw everyone closer. "Not everyone is cut out for this kind of pressure. Not everyone can make it." The room quieted. They knew he was talking about me. This was the part they wanted, the family drama. He raised his glass again. "To family, and to my sister Haley." Someone near me stifled a giggle. Daniel went on, telling the room that I proved some people simply were not cut out for corporate life. The laughter came again. It was louder this time. It sounded like a pack of wolves that had found the weakest animal in the field. Phones came up. People were filming. They were capturing the unstable sister being put in her place by the golden boy brother. It made a great story for them. Maybe I should stick to stripping. He did not have to say the line again. The message was already clear. You are nothing. I held his gaze. I let him have the moment. I let them laugh. I let the whole image burn into my mind. My father laughing. My mother looking away because she was ashamed of me. Daniel on his stage, powerful and cruel. Then, right on cue, the main ballroom doors opened. They did not open softly. They swung wide and hit the walls hard. The laughter died instantly. The music stopped. It was not a waiter. It was not a late guest. It was Robert Henderson, the CEO of Hayward Technologies. He was a tall man in his late 60s, with white hair and a face that looked carved from granite. He never came to parties. Ever. And he was not alone. 2 board members stood beside him, a man and a woman I recognized from the company website. Behind them were 2 very large men in dark suits. They were not party guests. They were security. Real security. Not the kind that checked a list at the door. The room did not simply go quiet. The air was sucked out of it. Panic moved through the ballroom like a sudden change in weather. Daniel's smile froze, as if the mask on his face had cracked but not fallen yet. He stepped down from the stage and stammered, "Mr. Henderson, I wasn't expecting you. This is a wonderful surprise." Henderson ignored him. His gaze moved slowly across the room. He looked at the champagne. He looked at the laughing guests. He looked at my father, who had gone pale. "Evening, everyone," Henderson said. His voice was low and calm, but it cut through the silence like a blade. He apologized for the delay and said they had been reviewing a few critical findings. The board members looked furious. Daniel tried to recover. He moved toward Henderson with his hand out for a handshake. "Sir, I'm so glad you could be here to celebrate with us." Henderson looked at Daniel's outstretched hand and did not take it. Then he looked past Daniel, scanning the room. His eyes found me. I stood alone, in my simple black dress at the center of the storm I had brought with me. Henderson walked toward me. He passed Daniel as if Daniel were furniture. He passed my stunned parents. He stopped in front of me, and the whole room watched. I met his gaze without flinching. The CEO of Hayward Technologies looked at me, the unstable failure, and extended his hand. "Ms. Nolan," he said, firm and respectful. "I'm Robert Henderson. I'm glad you came." The room changed. Confusion moved through the guests like static. I took his hand. "Mr. Henderson," I said. My voice was clear. It did not shake. Behind him, I saw Daniel's face lose shape. Confusion wiped away his performance. "Ms. Nolan," he said too loudly. His voice cracked. He looked at me, then at the CEO. "Sir, I think there's a misunderstanding. This is my sister, Haley. She doesn't work for us anymore." Henderson turned his head slowly and looked at Daniel properly for the first time. It was a look of cold contempt. "Yes," he said, "we know." Then he turned back to me and said they had received my message and the file. He called it very illuminating. I told him I thought he might find it interesting. Daniel started sweating. He looked back and forth between us because he did not understand. He was a salesman. He never understood the code. "What message?" Daniel asked. "Sir, what's going on?" "This is my party." The female board member stepped forward and said, "No, Mr. Nolan, this is a company matter." Henderson nodded, then turned toward the crowd of silent guests. "For 6 months," he said, Hayward Technologies had been operating under the belief that the Guardian AI system had been developed by Daniel Nolan. Daniel grabbed that sentence like a lifeline. "It was Sir. I built it. It saved this company." Henderson said, "That's not true." The silence became absolute. Henderson explained that they had run a deep source analysis that evening after receiving new information. He looked at me, then announced that my code Project Halo had been found embedded in their main AI system. Every line, every module. Daniel's face drained of color. He stammered that it was a lie, that I was lying, that I was unstable emotional, exactly like he had always told them. Henderson did not raise his voice. He told Daniel that code does not lie, and code is not emotional. Then he looked back at me and said the patent for Project Halo was registered under my name. They had confirmed it an hour earlier. It had been filed 2.5 years before. My father made a small choking sound. He stared at me, not with pride, but with horror. Daniel shook his head and backed away. He said no, claimed I had given it to him, that it had been a gift, a family project. He looked at me and pleaded. "Right, Haley? Tell them you helped me." I only looked at him. I did not have to say a word. My silence answered him. Then Henderson continued. "There was also the matter of the initials." Daniel whispered initials. Henderson said them aloud. H, J, N. Haley, Jane, Nolan. Written into the core file. A file Daniel claimed to have created from scratch. A file he clearly never even bothered to read. Daniel looked like he might be sick. But Henderson was not done. He said stealing his sister's work was disgusting. But what Daniel had done with that code was a company matter. The male board member stepped forward and confirmed insider trading, data manipulation, and forged authorizations for high-level data transfers, all traced back to Daniel's executive account. Henderson said Daniel had used my stolen algorithm to predict market risks and then sold that data to competitors and hedge funds. Daniel said, no, it was impossible. Henderson said the shell accounts in the Caymans said otherwise. The bank transfers said otherwise. The amounts matched to the dollar, the value of the data he had been leaking. My father's champagne glass slipped from his hand. It did not shatter because the room was carpeted. It only landed with a dull, wet thud. It sounded final. It sounded like everything falling at once. Daniel's face was chalk white. His confident golden boy eyes darted around the room, searching for an exit, an ally, anyone who would still believe him. He found no one. Guests, waiters, colleagues, friends, all of them stared at him with hungry, horrified fascination. They were watching a king get dethroned. They were watching a god fall. Then his head snapped toward me. His confusion disappeared, replaced by childish hatred. "You," he hissed. "You did this." I looked at him calmly. My heart was not pounding. It was only beating. "No, Daniel," I said quietly, and everyone heard me. "You did this." He called me a snake, a jealous little snake. He said I had always been jealous. Then he lunged at me. He did not make it 2 steps. The 2 security guards moved fast, each grabbing one of his arms. His expensive suit jacket ripped at the shoulder as they held him back. He screamed for them to take their hands off him. His voice went high and thin. He struggled. He kicked. He looked pathetic. My mother cried his name and started forward, but one of the guards told her to stay back. She asked what was happening, but Daniel ignored her. He kept staring at me and screamed that I had ruined him, that I had ruined our family. Then he turned to our father and begged him to tell them I was lying. My father did not move. He stood like a statue, staring at the spilled champagne spreading across the dark carpet like a stain. He looked old. He looked small. Henderson told Daniel he was suspended, effective immediately, pending a criminal investigation. Daniel shrieked the word investigation, as if he had never believed consequences could apply to him. Henderson told him they could investigate, and they would. He said Daniel had committed fraud on a massive scale against the company and against me. Cameras flashed. Of course they did. The guests still had their phones out. They had been filming the toast, and now they were filming this. The flashes were bright and constant, but for once they were not mocking me. I was not the story anymore. I was only the witness. They were filming Daniel Nolan, the golden child, the executive vice president being held by security with his face red, his suit torn, and his voice cracking as he screamed like a child. They were filming my father staring at the floor, broken. They were filming my mother sobbing into her hands. They were filming the perfect Nolan family shattering inside a room made of glass. Henderson told security to take Daniel out. Daniel screamed that they could not do this, that he was the company that our father needed to do something. My father finally looked up. His face was gray. He looked at Daniel. He looked at me. Then he said nothing. He only shook his head. The guards started walking Daniel toward the doors, and they brought him right past me. He twisted and fought them, trying to get close. His face came within inches of mine as he screamed, "I will destroy you, Haley. I will end you. You will be nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." I did not move. I watched him until the guards dragged him through the oak doors and he was gone. The doors clicked shut behind him. The silence left behind was thick and heavy. I could hear my mother crying. The party was over, but the room was still full. Nobody moved. Nobody left. Everyone stared at me, the failure, the ghost, the unstable one. I was the only one still standing. Henderson sighed and ran a hand over his face. When he looked at me again, his expression had changed. It was softer, almost apologetic. He addressed me by name and apologized on behalf of Hayward Technologies. I only nodded. He said what Daniel had done and what my family had allowed him to do was unforgivable. He looked around at the stunned faces at my parents, then back at me. Then he said, Project Halo was genius, the most elegant piece of predictive code he had ever seen, and I had built it 2 years earlier. I swallowed and said, yes. Henderson said Daniel had stolen it and still had not known what to do with it. He had only used it to steal. Then Henderson said my algorithm, my innovation, was the only reason Hayward had survived the last fiscal quarter. Daniel had been bleeding the company dry while my system had been saving it at the same time. He had taken credit for the save while causing the damage. Henderson called it remarkable. I waited because I knew what was coming. Henderson turned fully toward me with the 2 board members standing on either side of him. It became formal. Daniel Nolan's position was vacant. The division was in chaos. They needed someone to lead it, someone who actually understood the technology, someone who had built it. Henderson did not hesitate. He asked me to take over as interim head of data systems, effective immediately. My breath caught. Head of data systems. The job Daniel had just been celebrating. His job. His promotion. The female board member added that they would need my help with the criminal investigation, to show them everything Daniel had done and to help fix it. Henderson said the salary would be significant, and of course there was the matter of back pay and damages for my termination and the theft of my patent. Their lawyers would be in touch with mine. Then he smiled a small, thin smile and said he suspected I was about to become a very wealthy woman. I looked at Henderson. I looked at the board members. Then I looked at my father. He was still standing in the same spot. He had not moved. He stared at me with a storm of emotions on his face. Not pride. I had spent my whole life craving his pride, but that was not what I saw. I saw humiliation, shock, anger, and beneath it all, something I had never seen from him before. Fear. My father was afraid of me. He had backed the wrong horse. He had put all his money, all his love, all his pride on the Golden Boy. And the Golden Boy had just been dragged out by security under threat of criminal investigation. The ghost, the failure, the daughter he ignored and mocked had just been offered Daniel's entire kingdom. I turned slightly to face him. He flinched. I gave him a small smile. It was not kind. It was not forgiving. It was only a smile. "Well, Dad," I said, my voice clear enough to carry across the silent room. "Guess I am good at something after all." No one laughed this time. My father only stared at me. He opened his mouth, then he closed it. After 28 years, my father finally had nothing to say. When I left the glass room, I did not take the elevator with the CEO. I did not stay to talk to the lawyers. I simply left. I walked through the oak doors, past the crying wreck of my mother and the empty statue of my father. I stepped into the hallway where the city lights struck the mirrored walls and every reflection looked sharper, truer, freer. Daniel's world of lies had been built from glass, and it had shattered exactly like glass. Mine was only beginning. People always say revenge does not heal. They say it leaves you empty. But as I stood there waiting for the elevator, I did not feel empty. I did not even feel angry. I felt balanced. This had never really been about revenge. I had told myself that during all those nights alone in my small apartment, and now I knew it was true. Revenge is hot. This was cold. This was correction. This was truth. The universe had been out of balance for my entire life. My family had always tilted toward Daniel, all the weight on his side, while I floated weightless and unseen. I did not burn his world down. I simply put my hand on the scale. I presented the truth. The truth did the rest. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. As they began to close, I thought about Daniel's final toast, the line that had been meant to break me. He told me to stick to stripping. I smiled to myself as the doors sealed shut. So I did. I stripped away his lies. I stripped away his fake success. I stripped away my father's pride and my mother's denial. I stripped it all away, layer by layer, until the only thing left was the truth.